Hey, good evening. This is Sandy Schoelles with Jennifer Hynes and Nick Humphrey. And we are hoping that Antonio Reid will join us. Antonio had to work. People have to earn a living. We're still living in industrialized civilization, aren't we? And tonight, in this state of the planet, we've got a lot to cover. And the three of us, were already having a chat before this started. And wow, there's a lot going on, from what's been happening in Brazil and our very own president in the United States response. And he has to one up him. So he wants to open Tongass Forest in South Alaska. We have problems with coral reefs. Jennifer's going to go over what would happen with the EPA and the methane rules and our new islands up in Russia. And Nicholas is going to wrap it all up with the hurricane. And that's probably what we'll spend some time on. But I'm going to start a little bit by saying hi to people that are joining us. Kent. Hi, Kent. And Kim is here. It's always great. Torstein's here. Saying hello is one of my favorite things. It really is. And Darlene, see, it really is wonderful to see you guys and support us. You know, it's really emotionally supporting, because it's really tough to know and to be awake and know and be aware of the predicament we're living through. So as I was going through my thing, and I'm looking at, oh my God, really, why do we have to go against the 2001, the rule in making no roads? Okay, it's not scientific. In the Clinton administration, did they pass it so that the forest would not be decimated. And I want to just say hi to somebody else. Hi, Mark.
Hey, Mark.
Yeah.
Hello.
And Jack Wolf. Okay, I'll stop. I'm all over the place, I think, guys, because this whole Tongass Forest, I went on to the USDA website, and it talks all about the things that Sonny Perdue just can't lift this and say, okay, like Bolsonaro did in his country, because we have all kinds of land and resource management plans and evaluation plans and rules, or is the USDA being censored on their website? They state it's very interesting. But Jennifer, good evening.
Good evening. Good evening, Sandy and Nick and everybody.
Out. I'm an Alaska addict, and I've never even been there yet. So, Jen.
Oh, yep.
You been to Alaska?
No, I never have. Not yet. But I do know that the permafrost cliffs up in the Beaufort Sea are some of the fastest eroding seacoast on Earth, and that's all due to permafrost degradation and melting. Yep. And it's just basically, all these, especially like more, I guess, Inuit people or something. They live very close to the land up there, and their houses were right along the cliffs, and you could see they've just been eroding and crashing, and there's just like, as the permafrost melts, it's permamush, and all sorts of effects are happening. Maybe you've seen these permamush flows after a permafrost dam breaks, basically a big piece of land that was frozen, and then as it unfreezes and it gives way, there's a whole mass that comes behind it. And I'm sure that some of you have seen these permafrost flows. They're unbelievable. But yeah, climate change changes the land, that's for sure.
Yeah, those were, I was going to say, those were events that were projected to be occurring gradually, layer by layer, over the course of a couple hundred years. And you're seeing them happening, right now in catastrophic fashion and melting. That's causing slumps and collapses and melt lakes and the coastal erosion, and not just gradual melting top to bottom over like 200 years.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. Nothing's gradual about this. Everybody kind of still thinks, well, it's linear and it's going to be a gradual process. But when these abrupt climate change phases happen on Earth, they flip very, very quickly. And that's the most startling thing about it. And that's what we're starting to experience. This is the exponential in the exponential, hockey stick that we find ourselves on right now.
We've already got a good question, and this was right for you, Jen. How could the sitting president have the power to undermine a previous administration's regulation changes on methane? Just another massive court challenge. And what happens if this happens? What happens in our country besides just melting up in the ice?
Well, what's so interesting is that Trump is kind of alone on this. The oil companies are not even behind them. They're actually trying to keep the methane regulations in place. And Trump is the one who's really trying to abandon the whole thing. It makes no sense. But of course, what does make sense in this insanity that we find ourselves in right now?
Who's in his ear? Who's in his ear? What is it? The fracking industry? I mean, at all? Is it the pipeline industry? Are they the ones that handle the flaring?
Yeah, I don't know. It's so puzzling that how he could behave like this, but I think he's actually insane. And I think he has like a lot of, God knows what kind of conditions he has, mental conditions, but it's clear he has a lot of them, including narcissistic personality disorder and God knows what else. But I think he's probably insane, a very strange, bitter person, and just happened. How did it happen that he got to be our president? Lucky us.
Right, lucky us. Well, let me read this little thing I picked out now. It's not an endorsement because we're not endorsing anybody at this time, but quote, "The Amazon is being destroyed. So Trump opens America's largest rainforest, Tongass National Forest, to logging and mining. Methane emissions surge worldwide. Trump's EPA will make them grow faster. The president and his billionaire friends are a threat to our entire planet." Who is that? Bernie Sanders. I didn't get the accent right. I'm originally from New York.
Pretty good delivery, though, I must say.
Yeah, I tried, but you didn't get it. So, Nicholas, what have you to say for this evening?
Well, I mean, I think as far as Donald Trump is concerned, I think he's basically just running the country like this is one of his companies, which of course haven't always done so well. But I mean, he's basically running it like he would if he ran a company. Do everything possible to get rid of every single regulation or get around it and to get out of the way in order to make more money. Because I mean, he in some cases through stocks or whatever may personally benefit from getting rid of some of these regulations, and especially once he's no longer president. I mean, if he's not president and after next year, he's gonna go back to private world and try to make more money, and he wants it to be easier. So I mean,
there's more.
I mean, obviously he's got, and obviously just like in any other political show, there are people in the background and lobbyists and everything else that are trying to also make their money or make their clients money. So
it's sad, but I think it's sinister. There's sinister forces behind him, and I'm not talking Russiagate. I'm talking right here in our country. But that's we're digressing now. But it does lead to. I mean, all roads always lead to oil and gas in the long run.
Yeah,
because plastics and everything else that represents industry here, and we could do that. We could do this for an hour and keep finding things to get upset about, rolling back regulations. But you know what I wanted to also do, Jen? I want you to talk about the islands. The brand new, supposedly new islands up there in the Arctic.
Right. Well, there you go. We've got 5 new islands up in the Arctic. I think they're right next to Franz Josef Island, if I'm not mistaken. And Franz Josef Island and Novaya Zemlya. I don't know if I said that correctly, but I mean, you know, that which was hidden is revealed, and this is what's happening a lot as the glaciers pull back more and more and more, and land that was before sort of permanently covered with glaciers, it hadn't ever recessed that far, is showing up, and you know, all sorts of things are being revealed as glaciers pull back.
Yeah.
There's another very, very interesting thing that was revealed. I think it was like last year, and that was up in Greenland, right? There was a huge, giant pockmark, and it was around here, huge impact crater up in the north of Greenland. And it was found under the Greenland ice. And the thing about it that's so interesting, it was there, and I just watched a little movie about it on YouTube, and it was kind of like a crescent of ice, you know, and everything else was sort of, you know, retreating, and then there was this crescent of ice, and then they did that sound sonar, they did some sort of sonar on it, and they found that it was actually a 31 kilometer wide impact crater, and more interesting than that even is that the ice within that impact crater was only maximum of like 13 to 15,000 years old. You know what that means? That means that it's formed since, you know, it was formed right around then. And climate change is such an interesting thing that actually there was either a comet or a meteor that hit up in the north of Canada, and apparently Greenland. That same thing kind of broke apart. Like it was about 13,000 years ago, and that is the event that really triggered Melt Pulse 1A. And since the end of the last ice age, which really kind of started in earnest 14,000 years ago, you know, there's been like about 410 to 430 feet of sea level rise, right? So that which was hidden is revealed, and you know, cities are being discovered, you know, all over the place, because 410 feet, that's a lot of sea level rise. You know, wow. The Persian Gulf is only around 165 feet deep. Did you know that? The Persian Gulf is part of the Fertile Crescent, and that was all above sea level until 15,000 years ago, 12,000 years ago. So, you know, this is all related, and it's all fascinating. You know, there are cities like all throughout the Persian Gulf. And, you know, what does this have to do with the islands up in Russia? It's all connected, because that which was hidden by ice and different things like that, now it's being revealed. And all of a sudden, Russia's got 5 new little islands to do whatever they want to up in Franz Josef land. Yeah. Way above Svalbard, just about as close to the North Pole as you can get with those land masses.
And we know it's going to be exploited. They want to exploit just as much as you know, our country does. I can't speak for anybody else's country unless anybody's here that wants to speak for another country. Hey, I want to put this up by Matt. Each time the axial rotation is changed, it leaves embedded in the rock a geomagnetic signature. Well, that's pretty wild.
Absolutely. That's very interesting too, because the rocks are a living record of what has happened from a magnetic standpoint, electromagnetic standpoint, because the poles have shifted many times. They do shift as a matter of course. And you can, that energy is actually recorded within the rock itself.
Wow. So Nick, what does that have to do with meteorology? Anything?
Well, I mean, one of besides meteorology, geography is a big interest of mine, physical geography and geomorphology. So, I mean, I enjoy, learning about past climate change because of these dramatic changes that you see in the landscape. You see the disappearance of entire features underwater, and then they reappear, and then they disappear again over thousands of years. It's supposed to be over thousands of years, though, not over decades or years. When people that are depending on their city being in the same place or this area being agriculturally fit is going to go underwater or dry out or something of that nature. I mean, like, for example, if you lose the ice sheets on Greenland and Antarctica, you're going to have the agricultural areas of California, Central California Valley, go underwater. That area is going to be a big bay in the future. So,
well,
and then there's other areas that would also go underwater, either agriculture areas, and of course, everyone talks about the cities, the coastal cities.
Let me ask you a question about that. Actually, let's move to the other side of the country. And what we have a hurricane coming, obviously, and you're talking about the sea, what could happen, sea level rise. What's going to happen in Florida if this thing really hits with a lot of rain? I mean, I know that we're going fast and going into this, but probably a lot of people are interested to hear this from you, Nick.
Yeah, Hurricane Dorian. Well, it's a Category 4 hurricane now. I heard a little bit ago, 130 mile per hour winds. The storm surge is a threat to the East Coast, but because of the way the sea floor, local sea floor is shaped, you aren't necessarily going to get huge surges far inland like you would get on the Gulf Coast of Florida. But the inland rainfall, I was looking at some of the computer models. It looked pretty scary. I mean, you're talking about like 2 feet of rain, 2.5 feet of rain, isolated. Typically, the computer models underestimate rainfall. So if you see like 2 feet of rain, you might see maybe 6 inches more than that in an isolated spot. So the inland flood potential is pretty high if the system either comes ashore or skirts the coast. So, for me, that's almost scarier than the wind field because, I mean, you get the wind coming ashore and right along the coast is extremely violent. It could be Category 4 winds, Category 5 winds, maybe. We hope not. But once it comes ashore, the winds die down. But you get that rain, and because the system is going to be in an area of weak steering currents, which happens to be near or over Florida, then you end up getting tons and tons and tons and tons of rain accumulation just from it sitting in the same areas for like 2 or 3 days, which has been a rather persistent pattern we're starting to see develop with tropical cyclones more the past few years. Harvey, Florence, some of these systems that sit in the same areas and dump a ton of rain. Now, Harvey was, of course, the worst because it just literally stalled out for days. This one won't do quite that much stalling, but it could move slowly.
That's it. So when they move slowly, it's picking up the more moisture, and that is because the water is warmer.
Yeah, and then it just pours in the same place. So saying the areas just get the same rain.
I know. I was hoping it would hit Mar-a-Lago so hard. That would just be.
That's the joke on Twitter is, let's hope it sits right on Mar-a-Lago. And Kent says stall over Miami. I hope. Oh, well, either one of Trump's things.
That.
Okay, so Darlene, you're asking why what? That we don't really want anything to happen to anybody. We're just joking.
Right.
I mean, it's already bad enough that we have countries, our country, we've got a hurricane coming. The president has decided to stay back. Now he's decided to stay back, obviously, because he has financial interests. All these other countries are having also events, Russia, Turkey, India, all these right-wing countries, these Hungary, Poland, and the United States, and now the UK. I wanted to segue into something, and then we'll come back into that. I wanted to ask both of you, and I know this is a little off balance or offbeat, but what is going to be, for the state of the planet, these people that only have the interest of dollars? Each one of you, answer me. What is going to be, in your estimation, the result of what's happening on our globe?
I can take it first, I guess. I mean, it's basically just the acceleration of the collapse of civilization. I mean, you can't. I mean, we were already headed in this direction from business as usual. There's no way to get off business as usual by building more stuff and extracting more stuff and burning more stuff. You have to stop doing that, and instead you have these sociopathic leaders that seem to want to do more than that. I mean, Putin in Russia wants to go exploit the Arctic. The Canadians want to go exploit the Arctic. The Americans want to go exploit the Arctic. Bolsonaro wants to burn down the rainforest for agriculture, wood, and mining.
For all these companies.
I mean, they're burning coal like crazy. I mean, yes, China is doing more with solar energy and stuff like that, but they're also burning more coal like crazy. It's insanity.
Right. I didn't even mention China, because all these other countries have elected, these leaders that seem to not believe in climate change, and it's insane. And I was looking at comments. Jennifer, what do you think of this comment?
Well, I think this is a real kind of, you can only deny reality so long, and the people who have the most invested in basically dominating everything are the ones who are really denying everything because they don't want to hear about it. And they just think if they keep denying it, they can just push it and push it and push it till the very, very end. I mean, human beings are a selfish lot, and especially the ones in power are the ones who are the most selfish. I mean, if you ever notice that in any organization, especially where it's got a vicious culture, the ones that rise to the top are the ones that are the most vicious. And those are the guys that are actually running everything. Those are the guys that are like on all of these corporate boards and everything like that. I mean, as civilization goes down, there's no way they can buy themselves out. They're going to deal and double deal till the very end. They're probably going to end up in like nuclear missile silos with, some other people, and they'll have it all tricked out and think that that's great. And can you imagine anything worse than spending even one day in a nuclear missile silo with one of these crazy people? I mean, talk about like a reality show on steroids. I mean,
but then there's the whole other group, at least in the United States. I don't know about other countries who think that this is the end times, but not why we think it's the end times. They think it's the end times because of the second, I think it's, correct me if I'm wrong, what is it? The return of Jesus Christ. And then it has to do with, it's an evangelical view. So there is the thinking, because so many of Trump's supporters are evangelicals, that they don't care. So people are asking, I've been seeing this online, why is all this happening? Why do they want to destroy everything? Maybe because those that are in power now have that belief. That's another thing that's out there. And I'm not denigrating anybody. The rapture, the rapture.
Yeah.
I mean, this is what millions of people are believing. That could lead to climate change and environmental degradation because they don't care. They don't believe that, that they're in the end times in their way. We're in the end times.
They see it as being almost here anyway. So why slow it down? It's all sorts of weird factions that start to crop up when you're approaching or in the process of a collapsing state. There are those that are just in plain denial. There are those that see everything as an investment. We're going to invest in climate change. they see the melting Arctic as something to invest in. Get their ships to go up there, like the Northern Sea route's open right now. You can go through the East Siberian Sea just fine. And then there's the religious folks that that are on the perspective of not necessarily caring about nature so much.
Yeah, but this
in the
is
state
the
of the
state
world.
of the planet.
Yeah,
It's so much more than just what's happening. The fires in Brazil. The state of the planet is so much more, and it's all adding to where we're going to lose.
Yeah. Well, the state of the planet is unbelievable. I mean, when you consider the fires in the Amazon, which is a whole topic, the fires in Siberia, which is a whole topic, the permafrost all melting, which is, a whole topic. All of this is happening at once. Everything is happening at once. It's all going to hell in a handbasket all at once. And the denial around it is rather remarkable. It borders on the psychotic, really, because, you look at something and you just deny it, and that just for your reality, it's not there because you've made it go away with your mind.
Well, denial is a strong one. It's a strong one. But you listed out so many things that are going on concurrently, and think of the countries that we don't have access to know what's going on in there environmentally, like North Korea. Does anybody know about that country environmentally? What's the state of the planet there?
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I've heard about North Korea is that they're going through severe drought up there, like severe drought, like extreme drought. So they're all worried.
Really?
Worried about trying to. I mean, Kim Jong-un might be, might be doing well with his food, but he can't have his people completely starve. Otherwise, his own military will turn on him. So I mean, got to do something. So they're having to get more food out from South Korea to help themselves. And yeah, I mean, I know Central Africa and the Congo are having a lot of fires as well. I mean, they get fires every year from their own agricultural burning. But I've heard that there's like fires are spreading into areas that usually aren't on fire there, and there are more total fires than in the Amazon, which is horrifying because the Amazon is bad. And Alaska is also not doing very well with fires. They had some rains recently, but there's still areas of fires there too. So yeah, I mean it's bad.
Really dry in that, and the research I was doing on the Tongass Forest. The one part of the forest is extremely dry, but they haven't issued. Sorry, I'm flirting around with turning off things. They haven't issued anything yet, like evacuations or alerts. But that's what I was reading for this. So what are they saying down there okay, let's see. Jack says maybe they're just trying to keep the customer satisfied, knowing if they don't, people will riot in the streets. I always wondered why Obama approved the fracking. That's the only reason I can think of. They know it's too late. Thank you, Jack. See, we're getting a little philosophical, but that seems to be how what I'm seeing on the web, in my travels. People are asking why. It's like all at once. Why are all these people doing these horrible things? And then I'm waiting to see what happens with this whole Brexit thing in the UK. What kind of environmental reaction will happen in that part of the world? Anybody with us from there?
Well, my sister lives in the UK, and yep, she's actually a UK citizen, believe it or not.
Oh, she is?
And, and I think she's actually going to give up her American citizenship as well. So there you go.
Wow.
Yeah. So, but she's been affected by Brexit, and she was against Brexit from the very start. And it's really a very hot divided issue, and it's so fascinating that two people from like similar educational backgrounds, brought up together. One can be pro Brexit, one can be against Brexit, and it's really divided the country. And I think that it's just going to hurt the UK so much in the end, and it's probably going to disempower the UK. But I mean, I'm not an expert on it, I have to say. But what
Well,
do you think about it?
I've got an answer from Antonio, who's actually with us, but he's with us on screen. And he was answering Jack. Antonio here. Al Gore was speaking out of his ass. He was working for and carrying out the task of facing international politics on the behalf of the U.S. In 1995, the U.S. was the reason why Rio conference failed. The U.S. refused to accept that 2C was a dangerous level of warming. Al Gore's agency has been little different than Obama's on the environment. Well, thank you, Antonio. It's like you're here, but I had to say it. And that was Jack. That was for you, Jack. So, everybody has their thoughts on how things happen and why they're happening. And I appreciate that. Karen says, wow, she didn't know that.
I was going to say that it seems like, business as usual, whether the governments are left, right, centrist for their countries, or whatever the case may be, business as usual seems to be its own organic beast, that it always feeds. It always has to feed on something and feed on more of something. So all the politics of all these individual countries, from the smallest one to the biggest one, like the most powerful ones like the United States or European Union or whatever, they all function around not even maintaining things, always trying to make things bigger or grow and have more and feed the desires of of everyone, from those that want to get rich and stay rich to those that have nothing and want to get something. Right. And so I think that's why you see nothing change, and in fact things get worse. You get all these sociopathic leaders that want to make America great again, Brazil great again, Russia great again. Everybody wants to have power and authority, or feel like they're in a place where whatever theirs is, their family, their country is powerful.
They want to be safe. They just want to be safe.
Yeah.
And that's why they vote, because people are voting with their emotions. They're voting for who promises. They vote for these carnival barkers, basically.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, if you look at Donald, regardless of what people thought politically about Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump, who personifies the male dominant tough guy, crush our enemies character, Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump? Donald Trump. I can say that instantly. It doesn't matter whether I support him or not. It's just like, it's obvious that he's that guy, and if it had been a male Democratic candidate, I would have said the same thing. I would have compared the two based on that, because that's where the country was looking for. It was clearly looking for somebody that could have that sort of attitude.
And we got the extra added nationalist, the white nationalist. Yeah. And that's going to segue me into Heidi's question, because hers goes to Brazil. And hers, it's basically ecocide and genocide. And she said, I took a course, Amazon Peoples and Development, as part of earning my BA in Geography and Anthropology from the University of Southern Maine in 1994. I wrote a paper about the Yanomami. So I know that is happening. There is genocide and ecological ethnic cleansing. Either one of you want to answer to that one in Brazil? Wow. Do you think that that's what they're doing to the indigenous people on purpose? Because is that what Bolsonaro said?
Oh yeah, yeah. I'm not an expert on Brazil, but from everything that I've heard from Bolsonaro, I'm absolutely sure that part of what they're doing. I mean, part of what they're doing is for money. You know, they want the richest to make their money, but it's also a hatred of the indigenous peoples, because the indigenous peoples basically, their presence means the protection of those areas that otherwise would prevent them from making their money. They won't just get out of the way. They won't just assimilate into what they consider to be a proper Brazilian, you know, whatever that happens to be down there. You know, they won't get out of the way. So they have this, you know, ethnic cleansing and ecocide. You know, it's the same thing with the Native Americans in the United States, you know, and you know, get out of the way. You know, why won't you get out of our way? We're the strongest, we're the superior, we're the civilized. Get out of the way so we can use your buffalo, use the mining, you know, use even oil later on. They would, you know, I've heard stories of native lands being taken or stolen from native people, native private owners, because of oil in the early 20th century. So, and it's always it's the same.
Yeah, the state of the planet. It's I mean,
it's messed up.
I'm not speechless, because there's good things and there's support out there, but when you're talking about the state of the planet, you know, today, it's not so optimistic.
Yeah.
Even with all of the great things people are doing, like Greta being here, and my whole thing with Greta is that, and I'm going to say it, I would much rather see young people, because none of us are 16, and there's nobody that's 16 watching us to judge Greta Thunberg. Mm-hmm. I'd rather see young people like that, 16-year-olds, look up to, follow, and learn from a Greta than some mindless pop star or some silly little television, you know, star, teenager, who are peddling makeup and shoes. So if anybody wants to put her down, just think, how old are you? And do you know what the kids are looking at? And what is wrong with this child appealing to other children, since they're inheriting the mess that we made?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I have absolutely no issue with Greta Thunberg. You know, I mean, it's just as somebody that I disagree. I guess that there's a way to stop the physical thermodynamic processes that are underway that are going to that could very well end a lot of life on this planet, including human life. You know, I don't see a reason why I should be against any effort by a 16-year-old kid to represent the young people. I mean, some people call us in our 30s elder millennials. You know, kind of a joke almost. You know, we're basically the oldest of the millennials. You know, so I'm not. So I have a different perspective than even the younger millennials, like Greta, you know, who were born in the later 90s, you know, or actually, but you know, or early 2000s, I guess, actually, yeah. Oh my goodness, I'm getting older.
I love Greta too. You're my son. I love Greta too. My daughter's only a few years younger than you.
By the way, are you able to hear Sandy right now? Nick?
You can't hear me?
Yeah, I can hear Sandy.
Okay, I have to leave and come back because I can't see Sandy, so I'll be right back.
Okay.
Oh my
God. I'll be back.
All right, she'll be right back. Well, anyway, Nick, you know why I brought that up? Because so many people well, they don't like what's behind Greta. You know, they're saying, well, she's being exploited and she's a child. And that's exactly what the point is. She's a child. And there's, I mean, what do we do? What do we tell our 13-year-olds and 10-year-olds?
I mean, I know that obviously there are green energy, you know, moguls. Everyone's trying to take advantage of the Greta messaging. And I mean, she knows this. I think even today, actually, I follow her on Twitter, and she mentioned on Twitter that there's that there may be people using her name for commercial purposes, and she hasn't ever approved of anyone using her name or trying to use her to further some effort. You know, all she cares about is the curve coming down and not going up. You know, basically the greenhouse gases, the energy, lack of energy not coming from fossil fuels. That's all she cares about. That carbon dioxide curve going up. You know, it's a very simple message.
Teaching the other kids.
Yeah.
Jennifer's back. Okay, let's get her in. All right. Sorry, Jen.
Yeah,
Okay, you're back. You were sitting in the lobby, and I was blabbing about Greta, but you didn't miss it. You didn't miss much.
Well, I think Greta's amazing. She's galvanized a whole generation of youth and energized them and got them passionate and connected to their emotions and their indignation and all of that. And she is a power. I saw a video of her arriving in New York on her sailboat, and I'm like, this is amazing. This is really amazing. And, whether she succeeds or not, it's irrelevant. She's galvanized people. And I don't believe that she's, produced by other forces. I think she's very much her own person, and I think that there's a lot to be proud of there for her. She's an amazing person, Greta.
Yeah.
I mean, her being used by others is not the same as her secretly being involved with others or trying to do their bidding or be manufactured by them. As some have said, there's that's a big difference, because I mean, you can't control what others say or about you or say on, or maybe say about you or how they use you. You can potentially go after them for how they use your image, maybe. But I think she's more concerned right now with just using her, and I think she's even spoken about it, using her privilege as a European that happens to live in a decent country to represent people around the world that don't have the ability to do what she can do. I don't have the ability to get on a boat and go across the Atlantic. She got people that cared about trying to make that happen, so she would have to fly, to America. She did it the old-fashioned way.
Yeah, so she even had a thing so we could get her on the Grammys, and then maybe these kids we could get more on board.
Yeah.
And it's highly symbolic. It's not like her taking a plane or not taking a plane is going to matter a whit from a carbon dioxide perspective. But what it is it empowers this whole, gives people like energy to just, pursue their dreams. She's just such a galvanizing force.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, I mean, as part of the state of the planet, you can't not talk about Greta. And like Jeff's saying, I'm sure there are trolls that say she's funded by George Soros. Oh God, everybody's funded by George Soros. For God's sake, don't you know that I'm funded by George Soros? Oh wait, I got cut off. No, I'm not funded by George Soros. No, but he's my uncle. Okay, there you go. But yes, it's well, of course, we are the conspiracy minded country of all time now. Torstein says, "Yep, make America Greta again." I've seen that one. That's a good one. I'm glad that we could go on a little bit of a lighter tone. Let me see how long we've been on, because I know that we probably want to talk a little bit more about what's going to happen in Florida, and that always weighs on people's minds when big hurricanes come. So unless there's anything else either one of you want to talk about, it's really not my deal here. You can talk about whatever you want. About
the hurricane. I think basically no one knows what's going to do in Florida. I mean, seems to be the overriding message. I mean, right now the forecast is for the hurricane to reach Florida's central coast as a category 4 hurricane, most likely, and then curve northward, stall out briefly, and then curve northward along the coast, which would of course be devastating, in terms of like torrential rain impacts and destructive straight line winds. It would just be devastating. But there's a possibility it could curve a little farther offshore, which would be sort of like just hit maybe the barrier islands, any barrier islands, and sort of like Hurricane Matthew a couple years ago. Anyone that remembers Hurricane Matthew? Or it could come on shore and then curve north, which would be right over land, which would mean hitting Orlando and other inland areas, which would be also devastating. So there's basically two possibilities that are devastating and then one that isn't. And
calls on the height of the storm surge, Kent wants to know.
Haven't heard anything yet because it depends largely on where the storm goes. It seems fairly certain it's going to go over the northwestern Bahamas. So I've heard up to 12 to 15 feet of storm surge in the northwest Bahama Islands. That would be, I believe, Sunday going into Monday. So that would be very ugly. So, but the rainfall could be anywhere from 12 to 24 inches.
Sorry, we're not laughing at you. I put up Torstein sulky about Greenland. Trump wants to buy Greta. All right, Torstein, that's the comment of the week. All right, sorry, Nick. Continue.
No, it's fine.
As horrible as it is, but also Jack Wolf is with us saying the damage that he saw around Mexico Beach was horrific. This could be a lot worse. And then I have another friend who actually volunteers. Another person I know volunteers with the Red Cross and goes to all these places. So we'll be hearing from her.
I mean, if folks want my personal opinion, I'm still concerned about it actually hitting Florida, making landfall in Florida. It would probably be somewhere south of Melbourne and north of, literally south of Melbourne or north of Miami. I mean, it's that large of a range, which really for a hurricane still like several days out is not a huge range, but it is, so you don't really know where it's going to go.
So you're not feeling like people should be cutting and running like tomorrow? Get out?
No, don't be cutting and running yet, but there'll probably be a hurricane watches issued during the day tomorrow or evening. By the evening, there'll be hurricane watches for parts of Florida related to the hurricane. And there's already hurricane warnings and watches in the Northwest Bahamas. They're ready to get shellacked by this thing.
So what do you think people should be doing? I mean, who is with us or that are going to watch it, that are in the line of possibility?
If you're in the coastal areas, if you're on the beaches or near the beach or any of those areas, know your storm surge zone, because I know they have zones in many of these communities. So if your zone is declared for a voluntary evacuation, think about it seriously as a where you can go. If it's mandatory, just leave, because mandatory doesn't mean they can force you out, but
I wonder if we have a Floridian. She had to leave. She said, it's only Cat 4. I gotta go. Oh my God. Wow, she's a follower. So wow.
Yeah, but and obviously if you're in inland areas, you should be making sure you have your emergency kit with first aid, food, extra water, because the biggest threat obviously will be flooding and wind damage, where you could lose power for days. And I've heard statistical forecasts for the track as it was last night and this morning, which was more favorable to it pushing ashore and curving north inland. About more than 7 million people could lose power if it were. Yeah, so I mean, it's not that hard to lose power from a Category 3 hurricane. If it's Category 4, you could lose even more if it comes ashore and lingers over the land areas.
You think that could happen, like what happened in Texas? And you
that scenario probably not. Not with. I mean, you'd be talking like 40 plus inches of rain. This event, I mean, if it comes ashore, it could easily be 2 feet of rain. It could see that. I could see 24 to 30 inches of rain if it comes ashore and then slowly tracks northward toward Georgia. Yeah, I could easily see that. Where that band of intense heavy rain ends up, it depends on the track, but I could see that in inland or the coast easily.
How about Jacksonville, that kind of area in between Georgia and up Georgia, North Carolina? Do you think they're
they'll definitely get some burst of heavy rain from this system as it pulls to the north and then moves northeast. And the concern is that if it stays just offshore, like one of the models wanted to keep it just offshore Florida, good thing, but it may turn into a larger, more powerful cyclone that could go up the eastern seaboard and just offshore like New England, which would mean big swells, big waves, maybe some wind damage moving onto the coastal areas. So, I mean, we're going to be dealing with this thing for a while, for the next 7 days. It's going to be doing some crazy stuff. Somebody's
going to get it, right? Matt's in Florida, so I'm telling him to be safe because he's I think in the line of fire. But I wanted to ask. Oh, I have a very serious question. And Jennifer, what do you think about this?
Well, could you put up
what? Which one?
Could you put up Jack Wolf's comment, King Tides?
Okay.
That one.
Yep.
Because that's actually pretty significant. What I remember is supermoon this weekend. This is significant. King Tides to supermoon this weekend. When Sandy hit back in 2012 or 11, was it 11?
2012.
Was it 2012 that Sandy hit? That was also full moon. And, everybody knows that when the moon is full, and especially a supermoon, it gathers, that's why you get the high tides. So if this thing hits while the moon is full, which it is, and it hits at high tide, wherever it is at high tide while the moon is full is going to get a king tide, and it's going to get a king tide on top of storm surge and hurricanes. So just think about it, what could happen, and also thinking about how much sea level rise is impacting us as well. It doesn't seem very much, but if you get just like that much more, and then you add that, and you add the supermoon and the king tide, and and then if it turns in, somebody said here it could possibly be a Cat 5. Is that right? Oh my God. The potential for damage is astronomical when you add all these things together.
Yeah. I stated that so somebody on my page too, that it has the potential to be a Category 5 at some point. I don't know if it'll be there when it gets to Florida, but the sea surface temperatures, the ocean heat content actually increases somewhat as you get to the Northwest Bahamas and the Florida coast because of the Gulf Stream. So if it maintains its structural integrity as a hurricane, then it could have an opportunity to become a Category 5 at some point along the track, especially, Sunday, Monday. Some of the computer models want to make it stronger, make it have lower pressure and stronger winds than it has now. And it's already reached, a very intense intensity, 130 miles per hour winds right now. As far as the king tides, I think the highest tide of the next several days is supposed to be Sunday because of that full moon. But I know I've heard that there's already some coastal flooding in Miami Beach yesterday, the past couple days, because of the increasingly higher tides. And obviously that lingers into high tides after Sunday. And the system is supposed to begin possibly bringing tropical storm force winds to the Florida coast by Sunday night. So you're going to be getting the king tide and these other very anomalously high tides with this supermoon. And then you're getting swells in advance of the hurricane and increasing wave action from the tropical storm force wind field. And then by Tuesday, or by later Monday into Tuesday, that actual center of circulation is approaching. And even if it stays offshore, it gets very close to the Florida coast and you still have surging water coming in. And so you could see a lot of coastal flooding, a lot of storm surge, and a lot of bad flooding along much of the coast, especially if the system recurves just offshore. So, I mean, just having the system not make landfall is good, but it keeps the most destructive winds offshore. But you're still going to be getting a lot of nasty impacts on the coastal areas, coastal communities, and all of these areas have grown in population.
Well, sure, because of HGTV, everybody's got to buy a beach house. I always say that.
Yeah,
I check it out. I see it on television. I put it on just to see what's going on, because that's the state of the planet. Let's buy a beach house. Jennifer, come on, let's go to Florida and let's buy a beach house.
Well, I think that sounds like a great idea. Let's make it right on the beach.
Yeah, right on the beach. We'll just be the best.
See the action.
Yes, all the best. Oh my gosh. Well, guys, we've been about an hour, and I have a limit of how long I can actually sit. Do we have questions? Seriously, but questions from anybody that before we go? I think we've covered a Jennifer, what have we covered?
Oh, we've covered a lot today. What I think that one of the most interesting things we covered was like what is hidden is being revealed. So we're seeing that in these new Arctic islands that are popping up. We're seeing that in that Greenland crater. Everything is being shown. So this is really a time of reflection, and it's really a time of kind of like human transformation and reckoning and things like that. So I just think it's an amazing time to be alive. I'm grateful to be here witnessing all this, right here on the precipice as we see it for as long as the internet shall remain. I'm happy to be talking about these things with you on the Environmental Coffee House.
And I'm happy to be talking to you guys about these things. I feel like I'm a very lucky person that I have you guys as friends, and all of you out there. We all do it, and it is our moral obligation to continue these discussions. I feel everybody has a contribution. All of our commenters have a contribution. And Antonio, I don't know if you're still here, if you want to pipe in and have a last word. I wish you were here. Oh, well, Heidi has a quick question. Wait a minute. Heidi said, where is it, Heidi? I can't always see everything. She had a question about Occupy, but I got to go all the way. Oh, okay. Is there a chance of organizing another Occupy Sandy endeavor? They were better than Red Cross in dealing with Hurricane Sandy. Does anyone know about this? We have no clue. The only person that would have a clue is not in the comment section is my friend that is with the Red Cross. I don't know what's happening in Florida. So Heidi, I asked your question. Thank you. She is a wonderful activist. Heidi is. And she says, we are all blessed to be connected with each other. And I think that's a good ending. And Keith, we have you in our thoughts. Keith lost a family member, and we have you in our hearts. And I'm not going to say thoughts and prayers. We love you, Keith. Thank you for being with us. We care for you, as we care for everyone. And I hope to continue, I hope my health is to continue to bring things that are good, resources for support, like Jennifer does with Carolyn Baker. Nick, why don't you end us?
Yeah, I just I think it's kind of interesting. We're trying to come up with thoughts because I think about all this sciencey stuff, but then I think about also just the community of people. It's been very, very beneficial to me personally to be able to share my knowledge with people and have people respond to that, and be able to have people that understand what's happening in the world in my life. Because people, I think like you, Jennifer, you've told the story of flying over Greenland back in 2012 when it was melting, and you're so like focused on what's happening right in front of your eyes, and everyone else is looking at their movie or whatever, flight movie. It's just kind of You know, a lot of people are asleep, and much of it is because the society, the powers that be, if you will, everyone wants you to stay asleep and not care about the world around you. We're almost sort of socially trained to be that way, or only care about human issues and not nature and animals and plants and the things that we actually live off on in this world. And so it's very beneficial to me to be around others that understand these things and care about these issues.
Well, thank you. And remember, you're teaching, and you are really teaching, and both of you have amazing messages, and you're out there, and we are making a difference. And I have to hope that I make a difference in whatever. I don't have the scientific background you guys have, but I'm here and I love you guys. And so, Jen, thank you.
Oh, thank you. It's been a pleasure to talk with you guys tonight.
It has. Good night, everybody. I'm going to put Kim up. I wish I had I wish I had the music. We are family. I know it's corny, but you know what? The thing is, we really are, because it's a small community, but it's getting bigger because people are waking up. And
people are waking up.
I am going to say good night, Jen. Good night. Good night. Good night, Ken. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
Get my
Good night.